The answers then for the questions on guidance and feedback. So the first question was, describe one advantage and one disadvantage of using mechanical guidance in the learning of a motor skill. So mechanical guidance, it could be, for example, using armbands in swimming. It could be using a harness in trampolining or learning to do a somersault. And the advantage of this is it gives a performer more confidence or a sense of security. So we think of armbands for a child, they might not want to go into the water, but suddenly they've got armbands on and they feel a bit more confident. However, a disadvantage is that the performer can become over-reliant on this assistance. So if you try to take the armbands away from a child, for example, they might not then want to get into the swimming pool, so it actually can damage their confidence in the long run. Give a practical example of manual guidance being used to improve a motor skill in sport. So manual guidance is when a coach will physically put a performer into the correct position. So a good example here could be from gymnastics. So if we think about a child doing a forward roll for the first time, a coach might physically show them how to do it and put them into the correct position in order to do that forward roll. Another example here is handstand. So if you said handstand, that's a good example. But you could use other sports such as golf or tennis, where a coach will physically show the performer how to play a shot and put them into the right position. Give two examples of different types of visual guidance when helping to develop skills in sport. So the key part here is we have to read the question really carefully. It's two examples of different types of visual guidance. So you can't just say a coach giving a demonstration of how to dribble a basketball and a coach giving a demonstration of how to take a shot in football, because that's the same type of visual guidance. So if you use one answer as the coach showing how to dribble a basketball, that's absolutely fine for 1 mark. But then you might have said for your other point or your other mark, you might have said a coach showing a video of somebody taking a penalty in football, for example. You could have also said a diagram or writing or drawing of. So a diagram or drawing of, for example, somebody taking a shot in netball, for example. Or the other answer could have been observing a game. So a rugby coach might bring a player over and ask them to observe another player performing a tackle, for example. So we need 2 out of 4 of these answers to get the 2 marks. Which one of the following is the best practical example showing knowledge of performance as a type of feedback? So knowledge of performance isn't concerned with the overall result or the outcome or the score. It's concerned with the performance and particularly the technique. So if we go through the answers, a tennis player finding out from his coach how many first serves he completed successfully, that's all to do with outcome in terms of the percentage of first serves. So that's no good. That's knowledge of results rather than knowledge of performance. A rugby player knowing that she has played well because the crowd cheered her throughout the match. So again, that's got nothing to do with technique. So we don't think that's going to be the answer. An athlete receiving the result of a photo finish after a 100-meter race. So the fact it's got the word result, it's to do with outcome. So it's more to do with knowledge of results. So D, a netball player being told by a teammate that her shooting technique was incorrect in a previous match. So if it's to do with shooting technique, that word technique in particular, then it's going to be to do with knowledge of performance as a feedback type. So the answer is D. A coach gives a tennis player verbal feedback about errors in his forehand technique at the end of a training session. Other than being extrinsic, what type of feedback is this? So it comes from an external source, the coach, so we know it's extrinsic feedback. It's also knowledge of performance because it's to do with forehand technique, that word technique again. It's also negative feedback because it's talking about errors. So it's not great feedback for a beginner, but negative feedback can be useful for an elite performer to understand where they can improve. The other answer here is terminal feedback. That one's not actually on the specification, but terminal feedback is feedback given at the end of a performance. So if you put any of those three, then you're going to get the mark for that question.